All right, you guys should be good to go.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. It is currently 10:02 on the 6th of August, and we are gathered here today for our regularly scheduled Las Cruces Economic Ad Hoc Recovery Board meeting, and I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. First on the agenda is going to be any conflicts of interest. If you have any, please do raise your hand and we can address those at this time. Seeing none, we will continue on. It does look like we have quorum. Cynthia or Francisco, can you confirm that we do have quorum today, please?
We do, Mr. Chair. This is Francisco Pallares for the record. We are only missing Ms. Jolene Martinez and Ms. Sharon Thomas.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Seeing as we do have quorum, we're going to go ahead and move on to the acceptance of the agenda as is. If I hear a motion or any changes to the agenda at this time.
This is Michael Harris. I'll motion to accept the agenda.
I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Harris to accept the agenda.
Debbi Moore, Greater Las Cruces Chamber, I second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second by Ms. Debbi Moore to accept the agenda as is. Any discussion on the current agenda? As seeing none, Francisco, can I please get a roll call vote on the accepting of the agenda, please?
This is on the acceptance of the agenda as presented. Mr. Michael Harris.
Yes.
Mr. George Miller.
Yes.
Ms. Sharon Thomas is absent. Ms. Brooke Montgomery. Ms. Brooke Montgomery. Ms. Brooke Montgomery. Is absent. Ms. Veronica Archuleta.
Yes.
Mr. Ron Fitzherbert.
Yes.
Mr. Doug Cowan.
Yes.
Ms. Susan Greenwald.
Yes.
Ms. Jolene Martinez is absent. Ms. Darleen Lopez.
Yes.
Ms. Debbi Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion passes.
Wonderful. Okay. Then we do have the approval of the minutes from the meeting on July 30th that were emailed out to you. Any discussion or move to accept?
Debbi Moore, move to accept.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the minutes as presented. Do I have a second?
George Miller, second.
Wonderful. I have a motion and a second by Mr. Miller to accept the minutes as presented. Any discussion on those minutes? As seeing none, I will move to a vote. Mr. Francisco, if I can get a vote on the accepting of the minutes, please.
This is on the acceptance of the minutes as presented. Mr. Michael Harris,
Yes.
Mr. George Miller,
Yes.
Ms. Sharon Thomas is absent. Ms. Brooke Montgomery. Ms. Brooke Montgomery. She's absent. Ms. Veronica Archuleta.
Yes.
Mr. Ron Fitzherbert.
Abstain and was not present.
Abstained. Mr. Doug Cowan.
Abstain, was not present.
Ms. Susan Greenwald.
Yes.
Ms. Jolene Martinez is absent. Ms. Darleen Lopez,
Yes.
Ms. Debbi Moore,
Yes, and Mr. Chair, I see that Brooke Montgomery is connected. I'm wondering if she's having a hard time connecting the audio side to us.
I see that as well. She is unmuted though, so we'll play it by ear.
Okay. My vote for Cisco is yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion passes.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, moving on. We're making great time, everyone. We do have two discussion items for this morning. The first one is going to be increased effort in the distribution of PPE, which we do have a presentation on. And then our second one is going to be the Service Corps employment that we're going to have a conversation about as well. Ms. Montgomery, can you hear us? I see you there now.
I can now, sorry. I was having.
Okay, wonderful. Perfect. Okay, so she is with us. Perfect. Okay, so with that being said, we are going to first look at the increased efforts in the distribution of PPE gear. And I do believe that we have someone that is joining us today to talk about that as well, which is Mr. Coombs.
Good morning, everyone. Cullen Combs, Emergency Manager for Doña County in the city of Las Cruces. So since about mid-March of this mission, the state was sending out through the Strategic National Stockpile PPE, and it has since started to, well, a lot has been distributed, and the state is now looking for individuals to and organizations to start to look at procuring PPE through commercial means. FEMA has determined that the supply chains, which were very much frustrated at the beginning of this mission, have been reestablished. I'm trying to get a clarification back from the state through our logistics section to where they're going to as far as issuing PPE, and then also the means by which we can look at that. I know that I think I probably owe a conversation to the city manager and then also the county manager on where their direction is that they want to go to with this. A lot of our businesses have received PPE, particularly on the medical side with providers and whatnot. And I think that the effort now is for individual private organizations to start to seek that on their own. However, we still have a lot of first responders and whatnot that have needs, Department of Health, and then our hospitals. So we'll continue to look at that. And right now, I need to get more of a clear direction from how the state wants to do this. And also just kind of think working through Ms. Moore, what the status is with our local businesses and whatnot. So is there any questions on that?
Thank you for that. We'll open up for any questions for Mr. Coombs on what's been going on. Mr. Harris.
All right, yeah, thanks for that update. So I guess what I understand from it is that the state and FEMA both think that commercial industry can produce enough PPE for everyone, and that they don't see a need to at least help people at the state emergency management level. I guess.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that's a correct assessment. So.
Okay. So then I think the question that was raised in our last meeting by the person who gave a presentation from Brookings Institute was whether the city, well, whether the state, I suppose, and then the city by extension, needs to help the private businesses obtain PPE, maybe not from a supply chain perspective, but from a, we're telling you, you have to have this in order to open. So, you know, it's an undue burden maybe on the businesses. So I guess that's what you're going to work with Miss Debbi Moore about, to figure out, you know, whether that's a burden and whether that's actually keeping people from opening or doing what they need to do.
Yes, sir. I think that's a correct assessment.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we do have Mr. Miller who has his hand raised as well. Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chair, I'll defer to Mr. Harris's question. It was the same one I had. Hello, Colin. Thanks for your presentation. We're looking at helping the businesses out, and if we can in some way, and if we're requiring them to require them to have this PPE, it's an additional expense for them. And so we looking, like Mr. Harris said, to see if there's a way to help them with that.
Sorry, my wife just came home and the dogs are going a little crazy there, but yes, that is correct. Also, we've, you know, I mean, I count medical providers as part of the distribution, and then also we've been able to help out churches and whatnot with also with cloth masks and being able to issue those out.
And actually, I have a question as well. You know, I am a small business owner and I do understand the necessity now of PPE gear. Have you had a lot of businesses and or organizations reaching out with the need or the necessity of not being able to get it now? Because I know it's more accessible now than it was, you know, 3 months ago when this was all starting. What have you been seeing? Is there like a real big need for, you know, us to step in and get this more accessible, or what's with that?
Right. Well, we've actually had a decrease in requests. You know, by April, May timeframe, we had a significant amount of personal protective equipment running through my office and being distributed. But as of right now, it's kind of come down to a trickle. Now, and again, I don't know if that's, I want to make sure that, you know, if there's just people that are being left out or whatnot, to be able to find out what those needs are. But we've been pushing it out. I know the Department of Health has sent out messaging, the governor's office, to work through your county emergency manager to be able to get PPE. And so that's been out there. I know there's been things on Facebook and whatnot. So as far as the messaging goes, it seems like it's been sufficient, but if there's unknown needs, I mean, I'm more than willing to hear those and see how I can help facilitate.
Got it. Thank you. Mr. Harris.
I mean, I'm sorry, can I just make so one of the, as we've kind of looked at the strategic objectives for this, typically emergency management would be dealing with your first responding agencies and look at those mitigating steps. We recognize economic impact as one of those things for recovery to be able to kind of bring us out of this crisis. So while typically we don't work as closely with private sector, I determined through this crisis that was a strategic objective that we had to achieve. Got it.
Thank you. Mr. Harris.
Yeah, thanks, Michael Harris, for the record. So for a follow-up, have you seen much demand from just private citizens who need masks to go to the grocery store or whatever?
Well, we haven't directly distributed them in that fashion. However, what we have done is worked with the Las Cruces Police Department, the Las Cruces Fire Department, County Fire, and the Sheriff's Office, and provided masks for them. So as they have encounters with the public, they can have that opportunity to offer a little education and then provide them a mask. And also that on the law enforcement side, there's been a desire to not have individuals be cited, but versus, you know, be able to provide the mask and have more of a cooperative spirit with that. So that's how we've been kind of engaging with the local populace, if you will, on an individual basis.
Okay, thanks for that.
You're welcome, sir.
Awesome. Ms. Debbi Moore.
Yes, Debbi Moore for the record. Just to clarify, thank you, Colin, for your partnership and agreeing to be on this call today. I will address the rest of my board members here that I believe, Michael, you just asked a question about personal. We've been working with the city to make sure that they have the personal, especially masks for the citizens, and they've been giving some giveaways. We being the Chamber of Commerce have been giving away free masks throughout the state as my role of the state chair as person for the state chambers. We've had an influx of masks, although last week there was some healthcare throughout the state that needed them, and so our supply was a little dwindled that we have. But I will tell you, most businesses in the beginning had some challenges, but right now I have not heard. I do know some medical facilities, which I've worked with Colin on, getting the medical PPEs has been a challenge, but I haven't heard in the last couple of weeks. I think that, so we have this whole network of people that are connecting with each other to help, get it out there. Thermometers, I think as schools started, thermometers were an issue. So we've connected several resources for our schools to make sure they have thermometers. We've connected with people for sanitizing, for the jail, for the sanitizer, gloves in the beginning. So it's been a huge network throughout the state. And I just want to thank Mr. Combs for his department's assistance in that. And I do still have some masks. If you know, Michael, or anyone or any of my counterparts here, that we would be happy to donate masks to. We don't have a lot left right now, but certainly we can connect you with some and get you some masks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Mr. Harris.
Yeah, thanks for that. So for my part, I'm on the board of Crucis Creatives, the makerspace, and have also been talking with NMSU on their distribution efforts with their first COVID-19 response team. And we've distributed several thousand face masks and face shields, and I think our experience reflects what you've seen in that recently there's been an uptick from medical providers asking for stuff. In our case, we've seen some requests from providers who are not getting what they need from the private sector, whether that's just not having the availability, or in some cases their bosses and managers of their facilities aren't providing stuff for them, or not enough stuff. And so it's actually like individuals reaching out, but for work reasons, which is a shame, but it is what it is. So we're trying to get stuff out too. And it's good to know that the city and the chambers are also doing it. So sounds like we're probably doing an okay job right now.
Awesome. Thank you. Ms. Debbi Moore.
Debbi Moore for the record. And yes, Mr. Harris, I think we are. And I just want to compliment Las Cruces Creative, because I know we haven't talked a lot about the schools because that obviously is under another auspices government agency. But I do know Las Cruces Creative is doing shields for them. And there's some tremendous numbers of shields going on over there, creation. And so that's going to help the schools. But I think Mr. Harris, in committee members, in times like this, the key to getting anything done, and that's why I can't say enough kind things about Mr. Combs, is working together in communications. While it may not always be out in public, our phones are always running and our emails are very active, and we're going back and forth to ensure that we have a safe community. And I think that's why we all jumped on board. And I think I'm very happy about the Las Cruces Safe Promise. I think we are a safe community from a business standpoint all the way to the consumer. And that I think we're all playing a role in that as we work together. But I just wanted to shout out to Las Cruces Creative for the shields for the schools. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Of course, all good comments and all good conversation. So something that I kind of want to ask the board is I know for like my personal business, right? We have people coming in and out. We have people that are traveling. We have people that are doing all these things that are, from Albuquerque coming down for meetings and joining us or a dining experience or something like that, one of the biggest things that we've had that maybe we can look at and maybe talk about is that we have a lot of people that maybe don't have a mask on them or something like that, and we do require that you enter our establishment with a mask and you get seated with a mask and you go to the restroom with a mask, and that you act with kindness and compassion and respect for other people, especially your server who is serving you. So maybe is that something that we need to look at as to where we can help? My team is well taken care of as far as masks go, plenty of hand washing stations, hand sanitizer throughout, gloves, anything that they need to feel safe, protected, and all that great stuff. But we're having a hard issue where I'm trying to buy disposable masks for guests that are joining us to dine. Those get expensive, really expensive after a long time. Is that something that we need to maybe look at, is how to get, businesses, whether you're a small retail shop or an office building or something like that, that you are able to give a mask to someone that does not have one so that they can go out in public and feel safe and or do something like that? I mean, is that something we need to look at as a board? Is that something that's going to help boost the economy and get people going? So maybe that's something that we can look at. Ms. Archuleta, you do have your hand up.
Hello, I'm Veronica Archuleta for the record. I totally agree as well, because I am a small business owner as well for a hair salon. And I agree, we do have people coming in and out of our area, new customers coming in, and the struggle. I know not everybody agrees with wearing masks, but the struggle of having to mandate that for people that come in and that don't have, and it does get expensive, providing those masks for people, for customers that do come in. But I think that's a great topic to talk about as small business owners of Las Cruces, that we need to touch base on. I believe that, just for the record.
Thank you for that. Mr. Cowan.
Yes, and so we've been talking about this PPE, but we also just enacted the Las Cruces Safe, which is kind of covers that ground on recommending those safety precautions. And it was my understanding that we didn't want to go into the realm of mandating, but just making recommendation and leading by example, things like that. And so I totally understand that those PPE products are a little pricey, but doing business is pricey anyway. So maybe we could look at how to incorporate those costs and encouraging businesses to incorporate those costs into their business model, rather than mandating, making some kind of mandate. For instance, if we give away a 50-cent mask, but we can still keep commerce moving, I think it's worth the 50 cents if we can build that into our business model.
Okay, who is next, Mr. Harris or Ms. Debbi Moore?
Go ahead, Mr. Harris.
Okay, go ahead.
Debbi Moore for the record. Mr. Cowan, while it may not be a mandate, it is a mandate from the state. And I think part of the discussion might be how we, because I have incorporated, part of our training with our business community has been to, unfortunately, they've had additional costs burdened on them because of COVID. But I think maybe through our Las Cruces Safe Promise program, Mr. Chair and city staff, it might be that we really promote where people can get free masks. And then I pledge to try to see if I can't get some sources for and Mr. Combs, you might help me on this, for some disposable masks to give away. I think my last supply that it's already gone, but the last supply actually was disposable. And so part of what we've given Ms. Archuleta and Chris is that we have encouraged businesses to come to the chamber to get the free mask for that, not only for their employees, but for their clients that come in, because it can be very costly. So we could potentially work on how do we find maybe someone that would give us a reduced rate if we buy in bulk. And I do know we've had those conversations statewide. So while I think it's, we all know the importance of having masks there to give away, but it is costly, and we're trying to fit that coming down. I will say there's some other monies coming down for grants and things like that could be used by businesses to do that. But in the meantime, I pledge to this group that from a chamber standpoint, I will see what we can do and work with Mr. Combs and other people. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Mr. Harris.
Michael Harris for the record. I might also suggest that especially when like giving stuff out to law enforcement to hand out masks for community, during community interactions, maybe some more emphasis should be placed on providing reusable cloth masks, something a little more durable than your standard 50-cent disposable one. And maybe that would help, if somebody has a reusable mask, then they're probably more likely to have it on them when they go into a business. And also, when you hand out a disposable thing, police are talking to somebody, they hand out a disposable mask, they're just going to go home and throw it away. Whereas if they're given a more durable item, it's significantly more expensive, of course. But maybe that would have a more lasting impact to the community.
Thank you, Mr. Combs.
To Mr. Harris's point, the masks that were issued to law enforcement were a durable cloth double layer mask, and that were produced by I believe the Haynes Corporation, and that is what the state has been distributing. You can still go online onto cv.nmhealth.org, and there's a button to order a mask for yourself as well, which would be that durable double layer cloth mask.
That's good to know. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. Good conversation. Anyone else have any questions, comments, concerns? As I am seeing none, do we have any actionable items that maybe we can put forth for this to help out either on the Las Cruces Safe Promise side or another initiative that we can put forth? Do you guys see anything that we can maybe do? I know that Debbi is doing a lot with the chamber and helping a lot. So that is really beneficial in getting that knowledge out. So maybe partnering there, maybe and getting their information out to the masses so that people will know. Maybe that would be an idea as well. Mr. Doug Cowan, you have your hand raised, sir.
Yeah, yes, perhaps I was misunderstood. I'm not trying to suggest that we shouldn't ask folks to wear masks or things. I'm just simply saying, I think it would be a great idea if we have the ability to direct them to where they can get them, or we can provide them if we want their business, instead of booting them out because they don't have one. Giving them a 50-cent face mask might be a great save to continue to have good business. And certainly if there's places where we can help businesses go pick some up, boy, I'm for that. If they can, if the chamber can provide a large quantity to a business that can't afford them, I think that's a great idea. And if we could set up an education process, maybe, as you said, Chris, in part of the Las Cruces Safe, maybe include where these items can be picked up at low cost or no cost. And I know this in certain organizations. I know in our organization, we have certain folks contributing the cloth type face masks, as Mr. Combs had suggested. They're making those and donating them, and so you know, maybe something like that could be started from a grassroots as well, where we can get multiple people willing to do something like that, but at the same time just providing information on where they could get them. And again, the state does have a mandate, and so I think our role here is to help people to be able to move in the economy, to interact in the economy, for us to provide things in the economy, and we'll let the state implement their mandate as they see necessary, but we can help on our end by providing information so that folks can move forward into getting around and interacting.
Thank you for that. Mr. Harris, you do have your hand raised, sir.
Thanks. This is Michael Harris. To Mr. Cowan's point about people sewing masks and donating them, a piece of information I would love to get out is that Cruces Creatives, again, has been making kits for people to do the same thing. And so if you would like to sew mask kits and donate them for distribution through our various channels, you can go pick them up there, and we can provide some more information to city staff about that.
Thank you for that. Actually, that is a really good tool. So Mr. Harris, if you can actually forward that to Francisco so he can distribute if you have a flyer or anything, I would love to hang that up in my restaurant so people know that there's access. I already have shared a lot of the emails that I'm getting from the chamber on mask pickup, as well as the county, who's been having mask lineups where, you know, Sheriff Kim Stewart's out there with other elected officials handing out masks, and I tell our team about that and guests about that as well. So I think that's a really good thing. But if we can start circulating those within this board so we can spread the word about where those access points are, I think it would be a really good idea. And also, this might actually play into the Las Cruces Safe Promise, where not only do we have the promise and the agreement and, you know, all these things, but also maybe we can have somewhere on there where it's almost a little section that says where you can get a free mask or where you can get a PPE gear or something like that. That way people know that there are these different access points, and we can share them with people that are getting into the Las Cruces Safe Promise. I know that I would definitely look into that for our guests or anyone that is coming in and, you know, doesn't have one or something like that, or doesn't have access. So I think that would be a really good idea if we can get those forwarded out and get those talked about. With that being said, does anyone else have any comments, questions, or concerns regarding PPE gear and what we're looking at today?
Mr. Chair, this is Darleen Lopez.
Yes,
I
Ms.
just
Lopez.
wanted to say I do have someone who I actually had make some masks for staff for our workforce centers. So she does not want to charge for anything. She just does need help with donations for the fabric. She just needs fabric. So basically, if we had a way to, you know, if we had a need and we had a way to get fabric to her and some other teachers from the community that are helping her, they could do they could start, I guess, a little assembly of masks if need be.
That is absolutely amazing and awesome. Thank you for that. If you can also share that, or if you want to be the contact person that we can get in contact with to get any donations, I mean, everyone in this group probably has some fabric laying around. I know I do, and we can get those over. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I can definitely facilitate that.
That'd be awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Anyone else on the board have any questions before we move on? maybe we can think of some. Mr. Cowan, yes, sir.
And likewise, what we can do is, as I said, we have some folks here that are, they make those, and they don't charge a dime for them. They just want people to have them if they need them. And so I'll send over some information to you, Mr. Chair, and folks can contact our organization at Cornerstone Baptist Church, and we'd be happy to help in that area.
Awesome, thank you. So we have some really good contacts within this group alone that can help get PPE gear going and distributed. Anyone else? Last call for any comments, questions, or concerns about the increased efforts to distribute PPE gear? If I see none, we're going to go ahead and move on here pretty quickly. Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is Service Corps employment.
Mr. Chair, this is Francisco Pallares. We have invited Ms. Natalie Green. During the last conversation, there was a discussion with regards to what were some of the city programs that were already being carried in place. And Ms. Natalie Green is the person in charge of a program that the city has called Mano y Mano. And I just wanted to have everyone on the board some knowledge with regards to this program. And then if the board wants to take the conversation to another place, that is fine as well. But with that, Mr. Chair, I will introduce Ms. Natalie Green. Thank you.
Good morning,
Awesome.
Chairman, members of the board. Again, Natalie Green. I'm a Housing and Neighborhood Services Manager with Community Development. I did do a quick presentation for you guys, and I do talk fast. So if I go too fast, let me know if I need to slow down. But the city does manage the Mano y Mano Homeless Day Program. I do want to emphasize that this is a day labor program. It is not a job training program. It was modeled after the city of Albuquerque's program, and it's the idea that there's a better way. So it gives homeless individuals dignity in work. It helps them connect with service providers so we can help work on some of those issues that lead to homelessness. Its goal is intended to reduce panhandling across the city. So if homeless individuals have the ability to work for a day, then maybe it reduces their visibility on the streets panhandling. And then it's also intended to let the community know that there is a better way. So rather than donating funding to a panhandler, you can help donate it to one of our service providers, and it has a much greater impact than it would just to an individual. A little overview of this program. It is a partnership between the city and the Mesilla Valley Community Hope. It started in 2018. It's intended to help homeless, near homeless, and our housing insecure population. So essentially they beautify parks, they do garbage removal, pick up trash, landscaping on city property. It initially started as a pilot program. We took out one van with 5 to 10 people, and they were only going out 2 days a week. It has since expanded. We have 2 vans with 20 people and 2 drivers, and they go out all 5 days a week. Monday through Thursday, it's reserved for homeless individuals. And then Friday, we take out our precariously housed. So it's recently housed individuals whom still need some additional funding to pay their rent or a utility bill or something along those lines. So they do get a day wage, and they get lunch, and then they get supportive services from the agencies on the Community of Hope campus. The city directly provides the van. We provide reimbursement for the wages, the fuel, and then tools and supplies. And so again, they do litter, weed control, dumping, and landscape cleanup at many of our parks. On average, we get about 40 participants. It's a lottery system. Only 20 are selected, and we usually have to turn about 20 away. And then on a monthly average, we employ anywhere from 200 to 400 people. During COVID, we reduced the number of people that we were taking out to comply with the governor's orders. So we are only seeing 200 a month, but at the height of pre-COVID was about 400. And again, we're turning anywhere from 300 to 500 people away who want to work in our day labor program. We've employed about 8,000, we've had 8,647 work opportunities, and about 1,350 of those were unique encounters. So they can't go every week or they can't go every day, but they may go once a week or once a month. And generally how they spend their day labors is to pay a phone bill, rent or motels, utilities, and they save it. And then again, they help at various parks. So they, the neighbors at Desert Hills Trails Parks did a little event and thanked our Manu Manu workers, and they work out at Burn Lake, Brannigan Park, any of the city-owned property. And I will stop sharing and stand for any questions. And I do also work with many of the other social programs around the city if you have any questions on those.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this presentation. It was wonderful, exactly what we were looking for on this. So we do have some questions. Mr. Miller, go ahead.
Mr. Miller, for the record, Ms. Green, thank you for the presentation. I'm aware of the program. It's a wonderful program. What are the fiscal constraints about, or the constraints about expanding that to possibly include just members of the community that are maybe unemployed or seeking employment, or something like that? Who's funding the program, and how would you go about expanding it if we wanted to make it more citywide for a wider audience of participants?
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Miller, the limitations are really at the state level. The state has something that's called anti-donation. So we cannot use city or public funding to benefit private individuals. So when we are considering our programs, our beneficiaries, one, have to be sick or indigent, and then they also have to be providing a public benefit. So it really limits on who we can assist, and then also where we can perform those services.
Follow-up question then, with Mr. Chair, if that's okay. Is there any possibility to make these private individuals city employees? I think maybe that's where I was heading.
Mr. Chair, Board Member Miller, it's a possibility, but we also recognize that we're working with a very complex population. So while they are able to maybe work a 5-hour shift during, once a week or once a month, they are not necessarily in the right place at this time to do long-term or permanent employment. Many of the individuals that we're working with have co-occurring disorders. I think I see that Ron is on your board, and he works closely with the homeless population. So they have mental illness, substance abuse. Really, we're meeting them where they are, and they have a lot of immediate needs besides employment. So their focus is really on where are they sleeping the next day, where are they getting their next meal, where's their next shower coming from. So this is a small way that they can we can assist them in their ultimate goals, whatever those goals may be.
Awesome, thank you. We do have a question from Ms. Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Natalie, nice to see you. Jolene Martinez for the record. I just had a quick question about that. I was wondering if other nonprofits or organizations could offer opportunities for employment for these individuals. Like if we said, hey, we have a cleanup project a one-day cleanup project at FYI shelter could we offer, like if we were to pay the wage for that day for those individuals? Is there a way to facilitate that kind of connection? Because, or even I think about a lot of these restaurants who are setting up and taking down, you know, their outdoor tents, just the cleanup afterwards. There's lots of different, in my mind, opportunities for people to have these one-day employment situations that maybe other organizations can fund beside the city.
Chair member and board member Martinez, we are exploring ways that we could comply with the anti-donation. Again, the van that they use to take these individuals out is owned by the city, so it would be more than just the wages. It would likely be a form of transportation. And then it is a partnership with the Mesilla Valley Community Hope, so they operate and run the program. So really the conversation would likely start with them. And I know they're working towards their mission. So I don't know how much of they would expand outside of the current program.
Great, thank you, Ms. Green, I appreciate it. If there's any opportunity, we do have some bans at FYI and other employment, youth employment projects for homeless youth. And so if there's any way that you feel would benefit for us to connect to them or that we could support that mission, we would be happy to do that.
Awesome. Thank you. That's such a good offer. Thank you, Ms. Martinez. I appreciate that. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Any thoughts of how we can work this into a board action item or anything like that? Mr. Harris, yes, sir.
It's Michael Harris for the record. I suppose this is more just as a thought. It sounds like we're pretty restricted in terms of, you know, in terms of the state's anti-donation clause. You know, every program that's pretty much come up before this board of directly stimulating the local economy has always run up against that. And I know there's creative ways that you know, people have figured out to help communities in spite of that. And so anyway, that's more just a thought. Sounds like we're pretty limited. And I wonder how much, so like the program that was brought up last week, the Birmingham Strong Initiative, do other communities have similar restrictions, or are we working with kind of a unique situation here in New Mexico that puts a lot more restrictions on what we might be able to do?
Miss Debbi Moore, take it away.
Debbi Moore for the record. Mr. Harris, just clarification, it is by state to state, so it does depend on each state. It depends on what is written in the state charter or wherever amendment, you know, wherever it is that it states about anti-donation. I have found New Mexico is pretty strict, but we cannot. I think there are ways we can make some of this happen, but it does go state by state. But I think if we really find a way, sort of like with Birmingham Strong, I am investigating that from a chamber standpoint, and then we can draw our partners in. So it might not be a direct recommendation from this board that the city did, but certainly we can use some of our nonprofits that are on the team now to kind of fund that, and then the city could potentially be involved in it. And so there are ways not to circumvent it, but to involve the whole community to broad base it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Correct. Yeah, it is a constitutional thing and it's statewide, and it is in most states' constitution, the anti-donation clause, from what I have had to deal with lately. Mr. Harris, go ahead.
Yeah, Michael Harris again. So I guess a follow-up on using the nonprofits and resources that we already have. A question I was curious about, at the end of last week's meeting is whether there is maybe one person or one department at the city who is kind of responsible for being the liaison between, nonprofits that kind of fulfill the same goal. Because it seems like we have a lot of organizations in the city who are doing similar things, maybe not serving exactly the same populations. But is there like one point of contact who's kind of on the pulse of all of that?
Mr. Chair, Debbi Moore for the record, if I can just jump in just to answer his question real quick. It's my understanding, and I know Jolene's got her hand raised, that so she might address that, but it's my understanding all this falls under the community development. And I believe there's a grants division too, so it would be Ms. Gallagher. But Natalie Green, that gave her presentation, is very involved in a lot of this. So there is, I don't know if there is a department called the nonprofit department, but I do know that there is a community development, quality of life section of the city that they work with that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Of course, thank you. Ms. Martinez, go ahead, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jolene Martinez for the record. I do just want to, really, it was more of a comment to Ms. Natalie Green's point about the anti-donation clause. Maybe a recommendation of this board can be that the city partner maybe with some local legislators to really help address COVID-related changes to the anti-donation clause, because I think that other nonprofits like Community Action Agency, FYI, a lot of us receive COVID-related relief to kind of develop and change programs, but many of them are from health foundations or private funders. And even our organization really has received more funding to address COVID-related issues. And so I think that we do have to be able to find a way to really connect that private-public government partnership to address the recovery concerns, because they're going to span across so many different, we're not going to be able to address economic recovery without all those kinds of levels of partnership and being able to make some of these partnerships a reality. So I don't know if that's a recommendation or even really inside our scope of what we can ask the city to do, or even if we have a subcommittee of this board that really works with maybe like Representative Rubio or Senator Sol, some of these people that are more involved in economic development, economic recovery statewide, and really get them to kind of push some of these issues that have created barriers for this board and some of our idea making. So.
Thank you for that. So I definitely think that you're probably on the right track with the way that you're thinking about COVID-related issues. And I'm almost wondering if there's something that we could do at a state level within the health ordinance. I know that changing the Constitution of New Mexico for this kind of thing would take an insane amount of work, but maybe going through the health ordinance and distributing those might work a little bit better. We can probably reach out to those individuals. I know that Angelica is a huge supporter of community nonprofits as well. So we can look at that. And then, but that is really outside of my scope too. I just know the Constitution. Ms. Green, you do have your hand raised since you are our presenter. If you'll go ahead, you might be able to address some of this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Natalie Green for the record. I wanted to answer a few questions. The first is that Debbie is right. It is community development, and I am the single person that works on all the nonprofit grants. So that is me. The other thing is the city has been very diligent about awarding COVID funds. So the city's awarded 1.8 million. And again, that went through myself as well. And there's a variety of programs that we're funding. A lot of it is direct financial assistance to community members. We did some meal initiatives, some PPE initiatives. So the city is working on that. They're also working on a round 2 of COVID funding. So we are looking into that. And again, we're looking into some of those creative ways that we can comply with the Anti-Donation Act and still support the communities. So thank you.
Okay, Mr. Harris, you have your hand raised next. Go ahead, sir.
Thanks, Michael Harris for the record. I agree with Ms. Martinez about the fact that I think one of the, the city, for economic and constitutional reasons, is kind of limited to what they can do directly. But I think one of the things they do have is lobbyists, and we can recommend that they use those resources to maybe make change at a higher level, where the state has significantly more resources, of course, than the city, and maybe we can use the lobbying powers of the city to help more than handing out individual micro grants or something.
Oh, Mr. Miller, you're up next. Go ahead, sir.
George Miller for the record. All the suggestions sound pretty good for what I've heard so far. What I'm aware of from the past, of course, the federal government did the CCC core, I guess, back in the 20s and 30s. But the city itself runs through the recreation department, like the summer program for kids, teenagers, to give them summer jobs. And so this may be what we're looking at is much bigger than what the city can handle. So I'd like maybe the coordination with the state, but there are ways, if working through workforce connection solutions and in the city, that you can form a core. There's already a small, this model we have today is more private, but are some the city is doing outside of this that are smaller models of what could be done with actually putting either temporary employees on the payroll or working with workforce solutions to do training solutions, scholarships, and things like that to put people into job vacancies in the city. So I think there's other possibilities locally also. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Next up is Miss Debbi Moore.
Mr. Chair, Debbi Moore for the record. I believe Ms. Martinez was first.
Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Martinez, go ahead. I apologize. Miss Martinez, are you there? You're muted.
Yes, sorry. Sorry, I was struggling with my mic there for a minute. Jolene Martinez, record. To Mr. Miller's point, Mayor Pro Tem Gandara is actually working on an initiative with the bridge and addressing not just youth employment, but economic employment for a lot of families who experience trauma. And so it's kind of narrowed to that focus of families or young persons who've experienced childhood trauma. But there's already a work group with the Community Action Agency, the Economic Development Department, and the bridge that are kind of doing some work around that and are making some progress around creating opportunities to train people who are struggling with high school equivalency or specialty certifications in fields and getting them educated, trained, and then connected to an employer. And so they're making some good progress there. And just in general, I just wanted to thank Ms. Green. As someone who runs a nonprofit, we're super grateful for her service. She's always very supportive of the nonprofit community, always very connected to the issues that are happening and impacting all citizens in the city. And so I just wanted to thank her for her service and thank her for her commitment to helping organizations respond to the community needs. So thank you, Ms. Green.
Thank you for that comment. Ms. Martinez, with that actually, is that going to be housed with FYI, the bridge, or is CYFD involved in that at all?
No, not right now. I think the Community Action Agency is supporting a lot of their efforts right now. They're trying to get some stronger connections to NMSU, but so a lot of those development pieces are being coordinated by that Resiliency Leaders Project that Mayor Pro Tem is pulling together. So she has those 10 sectors. So there's like education, employment, transportation, housing. So there's 10 sectors that have these little mini work groups One of them is on economic, like connections to employment, educating the workforce, connecting them to viable, sustainable employment outcomes. And so I think maybe even hearing from the resilience leaders would be a good topic for this group moving forward, because there's really 10 sectors there that there's so many business partners in each of those 10 sectors that have already kind of started some of this work and maybe using their momentum that they have to kind of continue to push some of these agenda items forward.
I like actually where you're going. So maybe we can talk about that in a future discussion item and bring that up. With that being said, Ms. Debbi Moore, you have your hand raised next, ma'am. Go ahead.
Yes, I just want to echo Ms. Martinez's comments on the resilient leadership. And then I think she's also referring to the workforce collaborative that we've got going with community action. So there's two very strong initiatives that are working really cooperatively and in conjunction with each other to connect the available workers with the workforce. I just kind of want to bring us back down to our purpose. While I totally agree with the conversation on anti-donation, that would be a constitutional amendment that would take way longer time than we have. But I will say, to Natalie's point and to the city's point, we are blessed here in Las Cruces that we do have some funds available to our community that the city can give to nonprofits that are not in the general fund, i.e. taxpayer dollars that have been distributed already to many nonprofits in this initiative. So I think one of our recommendations could be to continue that, to really say as a board, we want to continue supporting of those organizations such as Jolene's and other organizations that are really helping those most vulnerable in our community to get jobs, to help, Councilor Gondar and her initiatives to those 10, we don't want anyone to have food insecurity. So I think one of our initiatives can simply be to strongly support what the city's already got in place without redefining the wheel. As Darleen said, they're doing a lot. So that would be one of my ideas. And certainly I think it could be to take a look at the anti-donation. It's been done in my 30-year experience here in the state. It's been done several times. I just feel like right now we have more important things that we want to help people, businesses navigate these waters. I agree with Ms. Martinez. I think we might get a presentation on both the resilience leadership and the workforce collaborative, particularly the three, certainly Councilor Gondera and the resilient leadership, as well as Dawn with the community action and Tracy Bryan with the Bridge of Southern New Mexico, because those things they're already doing some things that we as a board would not want to duplicate. And so I guess I'll say all of that to say, Ms. Martinez, I echo your sentiments. I just don't want us to reinvent the wheel. I want us to support what's being done so that we can continue down the pathway of recovery. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Awesome, thank you. Agreed. Good conversations all around, everyone. Thank you. We had a great presentation by Ms. Green. We've been having a lot of good conversations. Do we have any follow-up conversations or discussions on this before maybe we start looking at actionable items or anything that we can do to help everyone? I think Ms. Martinez has a great point with a future discussion item that we can look at. But before we get to that, any other questions for Ms. Green? Okay, as I see none, thank you, Ms. Green, for joining us today and giving us that amazing presentation and answering any questions that we had. We really do appreciate it. I feel like we're always learning so much information on this board. It's a great learning experience for everyone here. I think my mind is blown every time I'm on this just because I'm learning so much more than I already knew. And I was already a pretty informed community member. So this is just really cool for us. So thank you. I appreciate you. Bye. Okay, so moving on, We just had the increased efforts for PPP distribution discussion, Service Corps employment discussion, where we kind of got into some other things, which was pretty awesome. And now we're going to talk about future discussion items. So I think we are on the right track on future discussion items. I know that there was a conversation had about a state bank, I believe, the last week that we were on. And then we have some that were coming up now. So let's go ahead and get those discussion items going. Anyone, Ms. Martinez maybe has a really good one that we can talk about. If we want to put that forward. But I'll go ahead and open up the floor to anyone that has any ideas. Yes, Mr. Harris.
All right, I guess I'll put forth that the topics for next meeting maybe are the that public banking thing that we got information, we got some slides about that this morning, I think. And then hearing from the resilience leaders, that sounds like a good next step in our kind of service core discussion. And then, of course, the other item which is on the agenda is the Workforce Connection Scholarship recommendation, which I think we were going to get more information about next week.
Ms. Montgomery, and then we'll go to Ms. Debbi Moore.
I definitely agree. More information with workforce, the scholarship and solutions and where we're at. I've been seeing a lot of data about unemployment, and it seems like it changes, so it's very fluid information. So I'd just like to have future discussions on that.
Ms. Debbi Moore.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Debbi Moore for the record. To Mr. Harris's point about public bank, I'm having a hard time connecting it to the purpose of this committee. If Mr. Harris could maybe connect the dots on this, but they've connected me directly, and I feel like maybe they're not quite prepared. There's legislation that hasn't been done yet, so I'm trying to connect the dots with our purpose. So if someone could, if you could enlighten me on your thought process, Mr. Harris, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. So Michael Harris again for the record. I think it's an interesting concept from a more longer term recovery point of view. I think because the idea is that the state would put funds into its own public bank, which would have it's a nonprofit and it has specific community oriented investment purposes. As to the how it's applicable to this board, again, I think it's a more longer term thing. It would be more, we could look at it and then recommend it as something that the city support, which maybe they already support it. But again, make that recommendation saying, as we come out of COVID, because this is recovery. We also need to define what recovery is and what the recovery period is. And the recovery period is going to be very long, of course, years. So maybe this is a tail end thing, like city can't, we can't do anything about it right now, but this is something that would help recover our economy long-term going forward. But again, we would probably need some more information about that. And so that's why I think we brought it up last week as something to hear about more.
So, Mr. Chair, could I respond to Mr. Harris? Debbi Moore for the record. Mr. Harris, I totally agree. I think it is more long-term. I'm not even sure it's our recommendation. It's my understanding, and maybe Francisco can address this. It's my understanding the city has already passed that they support the concept. One of my concerns is that since I was first approached by public banking maybe 6 to 8 months ago, the concept has changed a little bit. And that's why I think I want to wait and see. And I didn't have an opportunity to look at the slides that were passed up today. I did have a phone call this week about it. I would prefer that we talk a little bit more and leave that long term to hear the presentation and hear more of that. But I'm just struggling with the connection, and totally agree. I know the recovery is undefinable right now, but I think that is public banking is a very unique concept. It seems to be changing. So that would be my thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Along those lines too, I mean, we are focusing as a board on the here and now, and I believe that the economic development side does have a board that is more of the long-term economic side of Las Cruces. And I think that if we do anything, we should just reach out to them and tell them that this is something that they should look at. But as far as us taking it up, I don't think it's necessarily our responsibility and or in our scope of the Las Cruces Economic Recovery Board to be looking at something that does not impact business, economy, and individuals here and now. It's nothing that we can actually do. I see Mr. Francisco's on. Mr. Francisco, did you want to add to that?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. This is Francisco Pallares for the record. I apologize because I don't have the hand raising portion, but the proposal for the public bank was presented in a work session. I think it was last year, but it was a work session. From the city's perspective, I think there was some support from councilors when that work session happened. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that this is a state. In other words, what if it comes to that, the city would put out, or the councilors would put out a resolution for support of state legislature. So this is more of a long-term thing. Yes. So going along with Ms. Debbi Moore mentioned, it is a long-term thing. First of all, it would need to come up in the state legislature as a first case, and we do have a board for that. The Economic Development Policy Review Committee deals with some of the longer-term policy review policies associated to economic development for the city. So that is certainly something that can come up in that specific board. As this one and the Las Cruces Economic Recovery Board, as it was created, it was more for the recovery from the pandemic situation. But it is a longer-term proportion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Cowan, you do have your hand raised, sir.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as Ms. Moore and also you, Mr. Chair. I feel like at this point, even engaging in a presentation regarding that, our meetings are limited to a certain amount of time. We've got some issues that we need to deal with immediately, and so there's other entities looking at those programs, and I'm just not sure that it fits into our realm. So in the way I see it, I feel like we need to move on to some other ideas.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Miller, you are up next.
Thank you, George Miller, for the record. I think the bank is going to take some time. I agree with everyone in the conversation on that, but there are some parts of that that are working at the state. And I think it was in the news this morning that the state finance folks, whatever that group is accepting now, offering loans for small businesses, which is kind of I think they saw the bank was going to take too long, and they're going to offer help to businesses immediately starting now. Applications Wednesday for low interest loans designed to help businesses endure the financial stress of the coronavirus. So there's this program that they're offering immediately. And I don't know whether that's available. I don't know if we want to even discuss that, but it's except let people know that it's out there. But there's some stuff, there's a piece of that that could be more immediate, I think. Thank you.
So with the small business loans coming out of the state right now, they are available. They are low interest. I know that I've gotten a lot of communication on them. And Debbie, I don't know, I think you guys posted something through the chamber about the New Mexico small business loans and the money that was set aside for them? Did you guys do anything
Chair,
with
thank
that?
you, Debbi Moore, for the record. Yes, in fact, we just sent out an email, I believe last night, and it's posted. To Mr. Miller's point, this is money that was designated, $400 million was designated through the special session through Senate Bill 3, and it is half of crime. And there is applications are online at nmfa.com. It is through the New Mexico Finance Authority. Then they will connect you for like authorization, through a bank, local bank, but all of the responsibility, no collateral, up to 75,000. It is open to businesses and 501c3s and C6s. Just in a summary, there's a little parameters, but the biggest parameters are between, for the month of April and May individually, 2019 as compared to 2020 for both months individually, you have to be 30% down in your income. So that's the summary, but you can go, I'm sure the city has it on their website, but it is also on the chamber's website, lascruces.org, and just click our COVID. But that is immediate. There's also, just for the record, Mr. Chair, if I could just say one more thing, there is the CARES Act money that is being given to the cities and counties, and that is by an application process that those applications are due tomorrow. And then decisions will be made. That will be grants to our communities. And particularly in our area, the city of Las Cruces is going after one of the grants, one of the applications that is for reimbursement of the city's COVID and then for small business. And then the county is doing everything else. So all the other incorporated, and so that will be coming down within 2 weeks. So you'll probably have a 2-week turnaround. So to Mr. Miller, to your point, there is some immediate things. There's also things on the federal level we're tracking very quickly that we're hoping that dollars will be available before the election. We're hoping that is in addition to the PPP. There's also some grant money. So I'm working on several levels to get some money to our businesses, both through the loan delivery system as well as the grant system. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. And then also with that, just kind of a note. So as soon as those loans became available through the state, there's a lot of third-party entities reaching out to small businesses, trying to get them under their wing for the loans, which we noticed as well. So that was kind of interesting to see all the not kosher, if you will, individuals reaching out for those. So be aware that they are out there. So we've had some really good discussion items. Is there anything else? I think we should be taking off the state banking for now. If anything, we should just reach out to the economic development side and have them suggest it to their longer standing board. And then Mr. Harris, if you could, you did mention one. Can you please verbalize that again so we can get that on the minutes for a discussion item for next week, please?
Sure. Michael Harris for the record. This was actually brought up by Ms. Jolene Martinez, which was to hear from some of the resilience leaders.
Okay. So with that, we have a item for the future discussion, which is to reach out to those resilience leaders. Ms. Martinez, is that something that you are able to help us organize and get those people on?
Mr. Chair, yes, I can reach out to Mayor Pro Tem Gandara and see which sectors we can focus on having come to the next meeting.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Ms. Debbi Moore, yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, Debbi Moore for the record. Just to address Ms. Martinez, I have a question regarding the resilience. Would it be appropriate to also invite perhaps Don with the community action and or with Tracy, and maybe talk about the workforce collaborative together? I mean, we could get a whole picture. Would that be suitable?
Debbie and Mr. Chair, I believe Tracy and Don are on the Resilience Leaders Economic Task Force. So they,
okay, got it. Okay.
So their sector actually represents the Resilience Leaders Economic Development sector. So I think it would be, I don't think bringing all 10 sectors here to represent what they're trying to do is effective to this board. but maybe just focusing on the sectors that are relevant to our discussion. Like I said, she has 10 sectors that she facilitates, maybe just bringing the ones that are relevant to our discussion. So, but yeah, that's the same group of individuals. So thank you, Ms. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I appreciate it. Okay. So far we have one item that we're considering for the next meeting. I feel like we're missing something, so if someone can help me out here, I'd really appreciate it. As far as it goes with the PPE, you know, we had a lot of good discussion on that, and we know what available resources are out there. I don't know if there's something that we can think of with like an actionable item with the city that we can talk about. I know that there's a lot of private partners that are doing a lot of this work as well. But maybe we can have a discussion about putting that into the Las Cruces Safe Promise as a point. I don't know if that's something that we just need to mention, because I think it would be really good to have like a roadmap of where to go to get PPE gear. Jolene, he is so cute.
Thank you. He wanted to say hi to everybody. Jolene Martinez and Jude Martinez for the record.
Yes, I agree.
Talking about
Mr. Chair. Hi, we're talking about you now. Yes, Mr. Chair, I agree. I think that that's a good plan. I think I really, the more that we can help people to navigate the resources, the better. We have this problem continuously. Everybody wants to help, but you know, if we don't find an effective way to get that information communicated to the people who need it, well, you know, it's not as effective. So I think that's good.
And that's exactly right. So I think we should start. So we have one discussion. I think the other discussion item needs to be how to add additional like roadmaps and or guidances on the Las Cruces Safe Promise. And I think that needs to be a conversation that we have. There needs to be other resources because not everyone in Las Cruces is watching our YouTube live videos, finding out what we're learning and getting the resources. It's our job to figure out how to distribute and get those resources to the people. And the Las Cruces Safe Promise might be the best avenue to act as a vector to get all this information out. So I'm going to recommend that we put that on as an agenda item. How do we distribute this information, and should we house it under the Las Cruces Safe Promise and give all those resources there in conjunction with, you know, the chamber and all the other chambers that are doing this work with us and the city and the county, and combined efforts and try to merge all that information maybe under the Las Cruces Safe Promise. Mr. Harris. Yes, sir.
Yep, I'll agree. I think I also try to be a relatively informed community member, but you know, I've learned a lot being on this board, and I think that it sounds like we have a lot of the services that, you know, are probably necessary, and the missing link is really just making sure that everybody knows about them and that they're distributed appropriately. So I think that's great. And we should focus on trying to get the message out about where people can get PPE, where they can get employment assistance, where they can get training assistance, etc.
Awesome. I think that's a really good idea. We have a lot of people that have been pretty quiet. If anyone else has anything, please do speak up, guys. We're all on this board to represent different entities, and we should start representing them. Okay. I am not seeing any. Actually, I have an idea for a future discussion item. Ms. Martinez, me and you talked probably the first meeting, or maybe the second meeting, about mental health during COVID and what's happening and people, you know, feeling comfortable going out, right? But I think there's a huge other part of this that I've been talking to people about, and that's, you know, I have team members coming into work who are down or depressed, or they feel very anxious going to work because, they don't know what's going on, or they just, they're at home all the time and they're social distancing and they haven't seen anyone and school's canceled. I think we need to talk about, mental health and how you can feel comfortable navigating, when we're in the middle of a COVID pandemic. I don't think it needs to be talked about next week, but I definitely want us to start thinking about possibly getting someone on here to talk about resources that are free, one, because it costs a lot of money to go see a therapist to talk about something like this, or to go into and get help. So I definitely think that we should look at what resources we have currently available within the state to help with this, because I think it's a huge issue. I've had team members come in and they look down and they look sad, and I'm like, okay, if you do not want to be here today and you're not feeling it, I don't want you to be here. I don't want you to feel stressed and down and get sad and depressed, because it's not okay. So take the day, go hiking, go social distance in a mountain somewhere, but you don't have to be here. And I think we need to talk about it. I think it's something that needs to be talked about, and it's not being talked about. And I think that that definitely influences the economy, right? Because the economy is not going to keep growing if people do not want to go outside because they don't feel comfortable, because they're down in the dumps and sad that, they have 3 kids at home 24/7 and they have nowhere to go. So I think we should talk about it.
Jolene Martinez for the record. Yeah, Mr. Chair, I agree with you. I think in the behavioral health sector, we've been collecting data since the COVID crisis started. We actually, Councillor Gandara facilitated a survey of seniors who were using services from the city, like the Munson Center, the Benavides Center, who were getting meals on, going in to participate in some of their services. And then we also did a similar response of the behavioral health system, just looking at where people using services, people were worried that the services were going to decline. And in fact, across the community, we've seen a higher rate of participation in therapy services, even happening via telehealth. And so we're seeing massive trends where people now are having difficult accessing a therapist because therapists are full. And actually, Mesilla Valley Hospital, they're over a 200-bed facility, and they usually function at quarter capacity. They're full. They're taking individuals for acute behavioral health crises, mental health crises from all over the state. And so people are really suffering with isolation, really suffering with depression. And they're talking about just the long-term recovery issues that the behavioral health system is going to have responding to when people had to come back to work, because even people who are making small transitions now, you're seeing the depression, you're seeing the, really it's a trauma response, and people are responding to long-term exposure to trauma or risks or threats. And so the recovery from that is also equally challenging. So I agree. Mesilla Valley Hospital represents probably someone who can talk about, they've absorbed a lot of that crisis and have also done some evolving. Like right now they're providing, they don't historically serve senior citizens, but they branched out into providing just a real simple depression screening, making sure that that person's connected to someone. And so I think they've been real evolutionary in that. And our organization has worked with a health foundation to be able to provide what you're saying, services without access to insurance, because a lot of us do provide those services based on access to insurance. And so we're asking for the health foundation to really support us responding also to first responders. Right now, the county is housing about 33 first responders, everyone from EMTs, nurses, respiratory therapists, doctors. There's about 33 that are currently being housed in a Holiday Inn for isolation. And those individuals are away from their families, they're away from their work, they're away from every supportive situation, and also some of them very sick and don't have access to their natural supports. And so there's lots of mental health crises that are springing up in lots of different sectors, but certainly the medical profession has been one that we've seen some extreme long-term impacts that sector is going to really be long-term impacted. But yes, I agree. And I agree that it relates to economic recovery, because these individuals want to get back to work and they want to get back to normalcy, and everyone's seeking normalcy. but also seeking safety. And so we have to find ways to create a narrative that makes people feel like they can achieve both of those things.
Yep, that's exactly right. And Ms. Montgomery will get to you in just a second. And I think something that we also need to look at too is that this is very triggering for a lot of people that have experienced trauma in their life. You know, we have taken kids out of schools, we've taken parents out of normal activities, like they don't have their normal support system, they don't have their social support system, they don't have anything, you know. And as a very social person who is an heavy hitting LGBTQ supporter, like young kids that are supposed to be in school that are not in school, who are, you know, gay, questioning, anything like that, they don't have a support system. And if they're not supported at home, you know, there's just so much to this. It's very dynamic. And I think we should definitely look at it and see if there's anything that we can assist with to help that. Ms. Montgomery.
Thank you, Brooke Montgomery, for the record. Actually, going along with what you said, Chris, I was thinking about kids and those type of situations in that support group. So I was going to mention that. I do know somebody had mentioned in one of the meetings I was in that, well, so I believe Las Cruces Public School might be increasing funding for home visits, especially for kids that might not be participating when school starts in their classes, or those that weren't participating during the stay-at-home order. So maybe looking at that data. I also was told that there was some suicides in teenagers that had recently, I don't know, I know that we've always had high suicide ideation rate, but recently in the last month, I've heard of several. So maybe looking at that, just even though we think kids, they're just little kids, I think they need that support group and they need to socialize. And sometimes they don't know how to verbalize that or tell people, they don't even know their own feelings, right? Because they're developmentally not there. And so they may be lonely and isolated, or going through what Chris had talked about. I was a teacher for 10 years, and that's definitely difficult, especially during like pre-teenage, feeling like not knowing who to talk to. So those are some things that I was going just to add. And also, if Mesilla Valley is packed, in terms of insurance, I know like with Medicaid, it can be very difficult, especially with some, and I won't insurers compared to the other ones, to go out of state or to get certain care, like the insurance will just turn it down. So they can't even get care. So maybe looking at that, especially if the hospital or behavioral health hospitals get packed, can Medicaid, and I don't know who we would ask, maybe it's Jolene, can Medicaid be more flexible to approve out-of-state behavioral health? Because in the past there's been freezes, especially like 4 or 5 years ago, and that was really hard. That was a really hard time. And if somebody was in crisis, they had to wait 2 or 3 months, and that could increase during this time. And so, and that a lot of that had to do with, you know, the shutdown of a lot of the mental health services plus the insurance. So if the insurance could look at that as an emergency during COVID, maybe, I don't know, somebody could lobby the insurance company. I'm just kidding. I don't know how that works, but maybe they could open the door to access something beyond our state. Those are my thoughts.
Agreed. And for anyone that doesn't think this is related to economic recovery, it totally is. Because if you are a mother and your children or a father or whatever, and your kids are just beside themselves with anxiety and emotions, you're not going to go out and pick up dinner at a grocery store. You're going to cook at home because you can't leave. Or you're not going to go out there and feel happy enough to go to a store and buy a new pair of shoes because you're going to be depressed because your kids are depressed. Or you're depressed, so everyone in your family is going to be depressed. This is totally related, and I think we need to talk about it. And I think we're all going to end up crying when we have to present on this, because I'm sitting here thinking about, you know, the suicide rate, and it is rising in Cruces. I know of 2 families already that have dealt with, you know, the loss of a loved one due to suicide in the last 3 weeks. So it's here and it's prevalent and it's now and it's affecting things, and we're going to talk about it. Ms. Martinez.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and Ms. Montgomery, I think your comments are right on. I think as a system, we've been really looking at how do we absorb some of these other individuals that are in crisis. The county just awarded the Crisis Triage Center contract to RI International. And so we're hoping as a system to really make sure that we're sending the right people to the right service and making sure that they're accessing the right level of care, you know, if they needed to be in a hospital versus they're having a 48-hour crisis and then can get connected to services in the community. But really, we're seeing such just a big disaster with individuals being isolated and isolation triggering a lot of other homology. And so, you know, we're really trying to respond to that. But I think you made an interesting comment about the schools. The schools, of course, not every school in Las Cruces has a social worker, and not every counselor is designed to be, you know, an emotional or social learning counselor. Sometimes they're there just as academic advisors. And so the school is in a real dilemma about how they're going to support their students. One of the challenges that they put out to the teachers is they're making each individual teacher responsible for the social emotional learning. So you're talking about, you're not an expert. That would be like me asking me to teach 8th grade math. I barely passed 8th grade math. So it's difficult to be an expert in something you're not an expert in. And so I think they are looking for ways that they can reach out to the community for more supports around home visiting, around supports to their students, supports for, and then you're, you know, of course, going into the homes presents its own risk for their employees as well as the contractors that they're asking for. But I think we're going to see a crisis start as soon as school starts, which is really in a matter of a couple of weeks. And so now other adults or other safe people are going to see these children and see these families that are really struggling. And I think our system will see the impact of that.
Agreed. Okay, I like where this is going, but it is 11:38. Excuse me, 11:38. So we do need to start wrapping it up. Ms. Montgomery, Ms. Martinez, and myself, I think we need to figure out who we can get to present and help us with, you know, dealing with mental health in that conversation. And we should have it 2 weeks from now, is what I think we should be doing. So next week, we have 2 things that we're going to talk about. The following week, we already have one, which is going to be the mental health aspect. And we're going to look at that and dive deep in and figure out how we can access these. And yes, it does affect the economy. So we're going to work on this. With that being said, I'm going to ask one more time for any questions, comments, or concerns on future discussion items at this time. Please raise your hand and we'll get there.
This is Darleen, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I think that there is, I know that each insurance agency has, what do they call it? It's like a complaint, not a complaint system, but it's something to that effect. And they actually, so let's say for instance, in that case, because I actually had a situation like this, it was for a medical reason, but I had a condition that nobody knew what it was. I had been misdiagnosed for like 5 years. And it just so happened that the person that read my sonograph happened to be on a special board and knew all about it. And he just happened to be in Arizona. So I was recommended to, or his office actually reached out to me. So I went there to get it. And of course the insurance was like, well, you know, you have insurance in New Mexico, not in Arizona. So I was able within a 24-hour period by contacting that service to get an approval, even though it wasn't in state. So there's a process in our state to be able, if the service is needed, if it's necessary and there's good cause for needing to go outside of your state, there's a process. I don't know who the body would be that oversees it for the entire state, but I might be able to reach my contact with United Health, and I also have one with Molina, and see if they might be able to point me in the right direction. That may be someone else who could offer some good information on this.
That would be awesome. Yeah, and I know exactly what you're talking about as far as the process goes, and it's like an appeals process almost that will bypass insurance to get care. So I think that would be a good lead too. So let's all work on this and see what we can have, and we can send ideas to city staff and they can circulate to us. So that way we're not violating Open Meetings Act. So let's work on that as well. With that being said, if there's no other questions, comments, or concerns, I'm going to go ahead and ask for a motion to adjourn. So,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
Mr. Chair, sorry, this is Francisco Pallares. It's just that I don't have that raising hand feature. I just was waiting. Just as a reminder that tomorrow we're going to be having the Las Cruces Safe Promise news press conference. And Mr. Adrian Guzman should have sent you, he copied you and all the board members in an email. So you are all invited to that at 11 o'clock. And Mr. Chair, you and Ms. Moore have been asked to prepare that quick discussion points for that meeting as well. I just want everyone to have as a reminder. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, any other questions, comments, or concerns? Any other announcements?
Mr. Chair?
Oh, hi, Griselda. Yes, ma'am.
This is Griselda Martinez for the record. Just to want to let you know that we just issued a press release. We are launching the technical assistance leading to access for microloans just today. And as you can help us distribute that information, we are partnering with Live Fund, and a key component to that is for them to help us with technical assistance, helping businesses become more robust, not only being loan ready, but being able to pay that back and continue to expand. So your assistance in promoting this opportunity will be very important for the success. Thank you, Chair.
Awesome, thank you.
I move to adjourn the meeting. Brooke Montgomery.
Thank you. Do I have a second to adjourn?
This is Darlene. I'll second.
Wonderful. Okay. We don't need a roll call vote for that. So all in favor, just say aye or raise your hand. Aye. Okay. Have a great afternoon, everyone, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much for joining us. It was great to have you all on. Have a good one.